Alright everybody, we are back here again coming fresh off our Ozzy Osbourne discography ranking. And like I said in that video, we're going to kind of do a little interlude with just a one album band before I hop into my next big band album reviews and rankings. And we're talking about none other than the 1986 self-titled album of the Prog Supergroup, GTR. And I wouldn't necessarily, I would call it more just a tag team than really a super group, because really the other musicians Max Bacon on lead vocals and Phil Spalding on bass and backing vocals and the percussion from Jonathan Mover, I've never really heard any of their other work. They're not very prominently well known, so it's mainly they're just kind of there as supporting cast, which they do great, but it's almost like they're a supporting cast. Well, Max Bacon, really, he's the lead role in that regard, but as lead vocalist, but they kind of serve as the supporting cast of the two Prog all-stars, Steve Hackett, of course, guitar player from Genesis, and Steve Howe, of course, from Yes, guitar player from Yes. I'll go ahead and say I love this album, but there is a major problem in production here. My uncle and I, who's a big fan, he's also a big fan of this album. He kind of turned me on to this album. We both agreed that the production, the high end, is just a little jarring on your ears, a little bit like, you take two trebly guitar players like Steve Howe and Steve Hackett, and then you bump the treble up on the album, and then with the high-pitched vocals from Max Bacon, which, again, they're all great, and he's a great singer, can hit some high notes, but you got to have some bass in there to level that out, because it kind of gets your ears a little bit, and, it's almost like a piercing kind of noise. But, I can still listen to the album, obviously, and still love it. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that you gotta kind of, almost like a warning, to kind of prepare yourself for it. But anyways, we'll hop in with side one with When the Heart Rules the Mind, which might even be my favorite off here. This isn't just a full prog album. I'd say it's more it's almost a little prog pop and then of course prog rock moments in there. But tracks like this, you got a really poppy and hooky chorus, which is incredible. And the backing vocals really make those choruses feel big. Sounds like a classic 80s chorus on a lot of these, in particular this track. Some cool time changes, nothing too complicated, but some pretty cool ones. Very pretty vocal breakdown from Max Bacon. And that track's just incredible. Then you follow it up with The Hunter. Pretty much the same thoughts as in the first track, just hook. And I think this was one of the biggest tracks off here. Not that this album was very big to begin with, but I think that one may have got some radio play back then, from what I've read. But that's another just incredible track, super hooky. And then you get Here I Wait yet again. And this one, those three tracks in a row, they just blow you away. And you're like, my God, this album is just kicking it off on that first side, going at it. And those three are probably just my favorite three off the album. It just don't get much better than that. But that doesn't discredit any of the rest, of side one or side two. But then you get to Sketches in the Sun, which is, I believe that's Steve Howe from Yes's, solo track on here, instrumental track. And that both him and Hackett got one. And I gotta say, I expect a little bit more. Steve Howe's done some other solo work, of course, his own album stuff, that are a lot more complicated and a lot better, in my opinion, from the stuff I've heard. But this one was just it didn't demonstrate a lot of his ability, and it was a little weird. Not a bad instrumental track, but it just wasn't quite up to, if you're a fan of Steve Howe, not quite up to his standard, in my opinion, of what he normally does. Then you close side one with the awesome Jekyll and Hyde, which is another really cool track. Cool way to wrap up side one. Then you get side two, you can still get through. That's another very solid track there. But not one of my favorites or anything. One that kind of flies under the radar for me. The big standout for me on side two, though, is Reach Out, Never Say No. That kind of follows suit with the first three tracks for me, as far as the hookiness goes and just how damn good the songwriting is on here. Then you got Toe the Line. Another pretty solid track. I wouldn't call any of these really filler tracks on here. They're all pretty memorable. But the ones that stand out really stand out. And Toe the Line is not one of those for me. Then you got Steve Hackett's instrumental, Hackett to Bits, which I actually really like. I think he kind of stole the show and kind of outclassed Steve Howe on the instrumental tracks, at least for this album. And he tore it up, did some really cool, some really pretty guitar work in there too. Then you finally wrap it up with, I don't know why I'm saying finally, it's not that long of an album, but then you close it off with Imagining, which is kind of a cool, kind of slow track to kind of end it off there, which is, I think, is a solid ending to a solid prog pop, prog rock, whatever you want to call it, album. Again, this is not really too complicated. Like, I know prog at times can be a little intimidating for some people, considering like the big grand links of tracks and stuff. Like, you know, if you're looking at like Dream Theater, Yes, and like a lot of those awesome prog bands, which I love those epic long tracks, but a lot of people, I get it, that can be a little intimidating. This is something that people can really get into. Nothing, I don't think there's anything that goes over like 6 or 7 minutes. So it's not as intimidating as a prog album. It's very commercially accessible, I think. And I think that a lot of these should have got like, I mean, I could hear them being hits for sure. But again, the negative is that treble. Maybe remaster it or something, guys, and add a little bass or something to that mix, and that'd make it a lot easier on the ears. But other than that, yeah, I think this is an awesome album. A must listen for fans of Hackett and Howe and, you know, any of their work. This is just a must listen. Solid tag team, super effort from these guys. With all that being said, we're going to go and announce the next big discography ranking coming up, and that is none other than Iron Maiden. We're going to be digging into that big 16 album list there. I kind of, you know, I think that will end up being the second longest discography I've looked at, with Judas Priest being 18 albums. And of course, Dio had like 10, Ozzy had 12. But Iron Maiden, we're going to be on that little adventure there for a little bit. But I'm super excited, huge Maiden fan. So we'll be digging into that coming up. But anyways, thanks guys. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this supremely underrated album. Thanks guys.